In a Hello, Chris. Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome. Oh, stop. Stop it, but do. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at this very special live event, which is being held, as I'm sure you know, in association with English Pen. Now, the organisation is very close to the hearts of tonight's guests. English Pen is a literary network that exists to defend and promote freedom of expression, to remove barriers to literature. It's a wonderful organisation, and you're going to be able to contribute to them later. There's going to be a very special auction. We are thrilled to have you here, and I'm delighted to be hosting. My name's Lauren Laverne. We are here, of course, in East London and also live online. Hello to everybody watching us at home and around the world. We're streaming on Twitter. If you want to follow the action, if you want to tweet along and get involved there, then the accounts that you need to follow belong, of course, to our speakers. Neil Gaiman is on @Neil himself. You can find Chris Riddell on Twitter @ChrisRiddell50. I've also been asked to point you towards the publisher's Facebook page. That is @HeadlinePG. The hashtag for the event is ArtMattersLive, if you would like to tweet there. Now, if you have any burning questions, then rest assured you're going to get a chance to ask them later on. There's also going to be an auction of a unique one-off print. So if you want to get involved in that, that's going to be coming up in aid of English Pen. I can see this is going to get out of hand very quickly. It's fine. Now, of course, Neil and Chris really need no introduction. I'm sure that you've all enjoyed their work, both individually and together, for a very long time. But we are here to celebrate something rather different that they've produced. It's a new book called Art Matters, and you should have all got your copies on the way in. Did you get ones? A pre-signed copy. Ballers only. Well done, everybody who grabbed one of those. If you haven't managed to get a copy yet, then you can pick it up from the headline people downstairs at the end of the evening. There are more unsigned copies on sale here tonight and some other wonderful titles as well. So fill your boots with new reading material. Of course, it's wonderful to be here at Earth. I mean, what an incredible venue this is. Brand new venue. This is a new home for the arts in East London, and this is its very first event in this space, so they're off to a strong start. Well done to the team. I would say that if you are going to lean on a wall tonight, be a bit careful, because there's a bit of wet paint around, to be fair. They've been working so hard to get it ready for you this evening. You might know that this used to be a cinema. It was actually built to be a cinema originally. The last film that was shown here, apparently, was Scarface back in 1984. So with that in mind, without further ado, please say hello to my little friends, Chris Riddell and Neil Gaiman. Welcome, Neil.
There was actually a moment of panic about 20 minutes ago up in the green room when we looked around and went, "Where's Chris?" And then we thought, oh yes, he's on stage. But we thought we'd lost you.
I've been having a lot of fun. Sharpening my pencils, I think that's a highlight. It's all downhill from there. And just drawing along, it's been lovely. I have also been drawing and showing some sketchbooks. Neil, that's for you. You're going to have to take that away and work on this. There are plenty of illustrations. It's a good starting point. Looking forward to that. Lauren, I've just finished this now, Japanese brush pen drawings. I want you to take this away with you, and also treasure this memory that we're all going to have, which is Neil's son Ash singing Hey Jude with some very good harmony.
Thank you very much.
Very well. That was the highlighters for me. And then this is a sketchbook for one of Neil's #1 fans. He has many #1 fans. You're probably not aware of this, but he is followed by a lot of people. And this is Stephen, who I kept forgetting to get Neil to sign Stephen's book that he gave me, and repeatedly forgot. And then I was drawing some shepherds and dryads, as you do, in a sketchbook. Stephen saw this online. The next time I saw Stephen, he said, I see you've been drawing some shepherds and dryads. I said, yes, I'm very sorry, Stephen, I haven't got your book signed by Neil, I forgot. Would you like this sketchbook as some recompense? He was very gracious and said, oh, that would be lovely. That was a year ago. I met Stephen in Oxford last week. He said, that sketchbook, do you remember that sketchbook? I said, oh, vaguely. So this is a bit of a debt. So this is for Stephen. I will see him afterwards. I hope he's here.
Is he here? Are you here, Stephen?
Oh,
yes,
excellent.
there he is, look.
Fantastic.
Are you streaming this on? You're recording it on your phone, Stephen. I love how, like, really pleased, but not pleased enough to stop. This is absolutely the correct impulse. Well, congratulations to you. All right, so I think we're going to start with a bit of a reading from the book, if you wouldn't mind.
I think so, yes.
Up for that? Great, let's do it.
One of those sort of fun moments where Chris says, will you read? First appearance of actual reading glasses in public. Will you read the Make Good Art speech? And I point out to Chris that the version of the Make Good Art speech in Art Matters is his version, where what he did was he went through the speech and picked out all the good bits. Or at least all the bits he felt like illustrating. So technically, I've never actually read this, ever, anywhere before.
An exclusive, I like this, yes.
And some of it's in weeny handwriting, which is why reading glasses. And there's Ash over there, who will do a running commentary and occasionally sing Beatles songs. Make good art. I escaped from school as soon as I could. I escaped from school as soon as I could, when the prospect of 4 more years of enforced learning before I'd become the writer I wanted to be was stifling. I got out into the world and I wrote, and I became a better writer the more I wrote. And I wrote some more, and nobody ever seemed to mind that I was making it up as I went along. They just read what I wrote, and they paid for it or they didn't, and often they commissioned me to write something else for them, which has left me with a healthy respect and fondness for higher education that those of my friends and family who attended universities were cured of long ago. Looking back, I've had a remarkable ride. I'm not sure I can call it a career, because a career implies that I had some kind of career plan, and I never did. The nearest thing I had was a list I made when I was 15 of everything I wanted to do. To write an adult novel, a children's book, a comic, a movie, record an audiobook, write an episode of Doctor Who, and so on. I didn't have a career, I just did the next thing on the list. So I thought I'd tell you everything I wish I'd known starting out, and a few things that, looking back on it, I suppose I did know. And that I would also give you the best piece of advice I'd ever got, which I completely failed to follow. First of all, when you start out on a career in the arts, you have no idea what you are doing. This is great. People who know what they're doing know the rules and know what is possible and impossible. You do not, and you should not. The rules on what is possible and impossible in the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them. And you can. If you don't know it's impossible, it's easier to do. And because nobody's done it before, they haven't made up rules to stop anyone doing that again yet. Secondly, if you have an idea of what you want to make, what you were put here to do, then just go and do that. And that's much harder than it sounds, and sometimes, in the end, so much easier than you might imagine. Because normally there are things you have to do before you can get to the place you want to be. I wanted to write comics and novels and stories and films, so I became a journalist, because journalists are allowed to ask questions and to simply go and find out how the world works. And besides, to do those things, I needed to write, and to write well. And I was being paid to learn how to write, economically, crisply, sometimes under adverse conditions, and on time. Sometimes the way to do what you hope to do will be clear-cut, and sometimes it will be almost impossible to decide whether or not you're doing the correct thing, because you'll have to balance your goals and hopes with feeding yourself, paying debts, finding work, settling for what you can get. Something that worried me was imagining that where I wanted to be, an author primarily of fiction, making good books, making good comics, and supporting myself through my words, was a mountain, a distant mountain, my goal. And I knew that as long as I kept walking towards the mountain, I would be all right. And when I truly was not sure what to do, I could stop and think about whether it was taking me towards or away from the mountain. I said no to editorial jobs on magazines, proper jobs that would have paid proper money, because I knew that, attractive though they were, for me, they would have been walking away from the mountain. And if those job offers had come along earlier, I might have taken them, because they still would have been closer to the mountain than I was at that time. I learned to write by writing. I tended to do anything as long as it felt like an adventure, and to stop when it felt like work, which meant life did not feel like work. Thirdly, when you start off, you have to deal with the problems of failure. You need to be thick-skinned to learn that not every project will survive. A freelance life, a life in the arts, is sometimes like putting messages in bottles on a desert island and hoping that someone will find one of your bottles and open it and read it and put something in a bottle that will wash its way back to you. Appreciation, or a commission, or money, or love. And you have to accept that you may put out 100 things for every bottle that winds up coming back. The problems of failure are problems of discouragement, of hopelessness, of hunger. You want everything to happen, and you want it now, and things go wrong. My first book, a piece of journalism I'd done for the money, and which had already bought me an electric typewriter from the Advance, should have been a bestseller. It should have paid me a lot of money. If the publisher hadn't gone into involuntary liquidation between the first print run selling out and the second printing, and before any royalties could be paid, it would have done. And I shrugged, and I still had my electric typewriter and enough money to pay the rent for a couple of months. And I decided that I would do my best in future not to write books just for the money. If you didn't get the money, then you didn't have anything. If I did work I was proud of and I didn't get the money, at least I'd have the work. Every now and again I forget that rule, and whenever I do, the universe kicks me hard and reminds me. I don't know that it's an issue for anybody but me, but it's true that nothing I did where the only reason for doing it was the money was ever worth it, except as bitter experience. Usually I didn't wind up getting the money either. The things I did because I was excited and wanted to see them exist in reality have never let me down, and I've never regretted the time I spent on any of them. The problems of failure are hard. The problems of success can be harder because nobody warns you about them. The first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you are getting away with something, and that any moment now they will discover you. It's imposter syndrome, something my wife Amanda christened the fraud police. In my case, I was convinced that there would be a knock on the door and a man with a clipboard. I don't know why he carried a clipboard in my head, but he did. Would be there to tell me it was all over and they had caught up with me, and now I would have to go and get a real job, one that didn't consist of making things up and writing them down and reading books I wanted to read. And then I would go away quietly and get the kind of job where you don't have to make things up anymore. The problems of success. They're real, and with luck you'll experience them, the point where you stop saying yes to everything because now the bottles you threw in the ocean are all coming back and you have to learn to say no. I watched my peers and my friends and the ones who were older than me and watched how miserable some of them were. I'd listened to them telling me that they couldn't envisage a world where they did what they had always wanted to do anymore because now they had to earn a certain amount every month just to keep where they were. They couldn't go and do the things that mattered and that they'd really wanted to do. And that seemed as big a tragedy as any problem of failure. And after that, the biggest problem of success is that the world conspires to stop you doing the thing that you do because you are successful. There was a day when I looked up and realized that I had become someone who professionally replied to email and who wrote as a hobby. I started answering fewer emails and was relieved to find I was writing much more. Fourthly, if you're making mistakes, it means you're out there doing something. And the mistakes in themselves can be useful. I once misspelled Caroline in a letter, transposing the A and the O. And I thought, Coraline looks like a real name. And remember, whatever discipline you're in, whether you're a musician or a photographer, a fine artist or a cartoonist, a writer, a dancer, a designer, whatever you do, you have one thing that's unique. You have the ability to make art. And for me and for so many of the people I've known, that's been a lifesaver, the ultimate lifesaver. It gets you through good times, and it gets you through the other ones. Life is sometimes hard. Things go wrong in life and in love and in business and in friendship and in health and in all the other ways that life can go wrong. And when things get tough, this is what you should do. Make good art. I'm serious. Husband runs off with a politician, make good art. Leg crushed and then eaten by mutated boa constrictor, make good art. Internal Revenue Service on your trail, make good art. Cat exploded, make good art. Somebody on the internet thinks what you do is stupid or evil or it's all been done before, make good art. Probably things will work out somehow, and eventually time will take the sting away, but that doesn't matter. Do what only you do best. Make good art. Make it on the good days, too. And fifthly, while you're at it, make your art. Do the stuff that only you can do. The urge starting out is to copy, and that's not a bad thing. Most of us only find our own voices after we've sounded like a lot of other people. But the one thing that you have that nobody else has is you. Your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and dance and live as only you can. The moment that you feel that just possibly you're walking down the street naked, exposing too much of your heart and your mind and what exists on the inside, showing too much of yourself, that's the moment you may be starting to get it right. The things I've done that worked the best were the things I was the least certain about. The stories where I was sure they would either work or more likely be the kinds of embarrassing failures people would gather together and talk about until the end of time. They always had that in common. Looking back at them, people explain why they were inevitable successes. While I was doing them, I had no idea. I still don't. And where would the fun be in making something you knew was going to work? And sometimes the things I did really didn't work. There are stories of mine that have never been reprinted. Some of them never even left the house. But I learned as much from them as I did from the things that worked. Sixthly, I will pass on some secret freelancer knowledge, Secret knowledge is always good. And it's useful for anyone who ever plans to create art for other people, to enter a freelance world of any kind. I learned it in comics, but it applies to other fields, and it's this. People get hired because somehow they get hired. In my case, I did something which these days would be easy to check and would get me into trouble, and when I started out in those pre-internet days seemed like a sensible career strategy. When I was asked by editors who I'd worked for, I lied. I listed a handful of magazines that sounded likely, and I sounded confident, and I got jobs. I then made it a point of honor to have written for each of the magazines I listed to get that first job, so that I hadn't actually lied, I'd just been chronologically challenged. You get work however you get work. People keep working in a freelance world, and more of today's world is freelance because, one, their work is good, and two, because they're easy to get along with, and three, because they deliver the work on time. And you don't even need all three. 2 out of 3 is fine. People will tolerate how unpleasant you are if your work is good and you deliver it on time. They will forgive the lateness of the work if it's good and if they like you. And you don't have to be as good as the others if you're on time, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you. So I started trying to think what the best advice I'd been given over the years was, and it came from Stephen King. 20 years ago, at the height of the success of Sandman, I was writing a comic that people loved and were taking seriously. King liked Sandman, and my novel with Terry Pratchett, Good Omens, and he saw the madness, the long signing lines, all that, and his advice was this. This is really great. You should enjoy it. And I didn't. Best advice I got that I ignored. Instead, I worried about it. I worried about the next deadline, the next idea, the next story. There wasn't a moment for the next 14 or 15 years that I wasn't writing something in my head or wondering about it, and I didn't stop and look around and go, this is really fun. I wish I'd enjoyed it more. It's been an amazing ride, but there were parts of the ride I missed because I was too worried about things going wrong, about what came next to enjoy the bit I was on. That was the hardest lesson for me, I think, to let go and enjoy the ride, because the ride takes you to some remarkable and unexpected places. I wish you luck. Luck is useful. Often you'll discover that the harder you work and the more wisely you work, the luckier you get. But there is luck, and it helps. We're in a transitional world right now. If you're in any kind of artistic field, because the nature of distribution is changing, the models by which creators get their work out into the world and got to keep a roof over their heads and buy sandwiches while they did that are all changing. I've talked to people at the top of the food chain, in publishing, in book selling, in all those areas, and nobody knows what the landscape will look like 2 years from now, let alone a decade away. The distribution channels that people have built over the last century or so are in flux, for print, for visual artists, for musicians, for creative people of all kinds, which is on the one hand intimidating, and on the other immensely liberating. The rules, the assumptions, the now we're supposed to's of how to get your work seen and what you do then are breaking down. The gatekeepers are leaving the gates. You can be as creative as you need to be to get your work seen. YouTube and the web and whatever comes after YouTube and the web can give you more people watching than television ever did. The old rules are crumbling, and nobody knows what the new rules are. So make up your own rules. Someone asked me recently how to do something she thought was going to be difficult, in this case, recording an audiobook. And I suggested she pretend that she was someone who could do it. Not pretend to do it, but pretend she was someone who could. She put up a notice to this effect on the studio wall, and she said it helped. So be wise, because the world needs more wisdom. And if you cannot be wise, pretend to be someone who is wise, and then just behave like they would. Make interesting, amazing, glorious, fantastic mistakes. Break rules. Leave the world more interesting for your being here. Make good art. Great editorial job.
It's fantastic to hear the message and to see this message that you two have created together, getting out there in this amazing new venue, which is packed out tonight. Everybody has come out and everybody is open to hearing the idea that art matters. I want to ask about why you decided to create this book now and where the challenge to that idea is, because obviously, you know, it isn't in this room. Everybody's come here open to that idea, but you obviously feel that, you know, there are places where that people disagree with that idea and where, you know, freedom of speech and freedom of expression is limited.
Well, so that's about 9 questions, Lauren.
We haven't got long.
I'll pick a few, and Chris can pick a few. So, I mean, the first question is just why this book, why it exists, what it is. The book is entirely Chris's fault. And that's because Chris does not stop drawing things. And one of the lovely things about knowing Chris, and because we're friends, he reads my stuff. I don't know if he'd do it because if he wasn't my friend, but he does. He reads my stuff. So every now and then, on Twitter or Facebook or Tumblr, or I'll just get an email, and he'll have taken a poem of mine or a speech or a little chunk of something and turned it into a dozen pictures. I love it when he does it with the poetry. It just breaks my heart. And he's been doing this, and you can't actually stop him. I'm possibly gunpoint.
I do feel, though, that Neil is an enabler. I
He's
remember...
an art enabler, Chris, is that what you're saying?
I feel that. I feel that. I mean, I was innocently sitting on a commuter train approaching East Croydon, and the phone went. It was from somewhere in America. I didn't recognize the number. I answered, and it was Neil. And Neil said, I'd like to read you a story. I said, oh, well, go on then. And I fought the instinct to put Neil on speakerphone and call for quiet in the carriage. You know, I've got Neil here, he's going to read us a story. I'm ashamed to say I kept it to myself, and I just listened while Neil read me, forgive me, Neil, a very inappropriately scary story for small children. Which I instantly knew I could do something with. I thought, this is fantastic. And I sketched some drawings. I sent an email over to you, Neil, with the sketches. And then I took those sketches and put them in a rather exquisite portfolio that I keep for just this purpose. It has ribbons that I can tie. And it's got a lovely sort of brown paper sort of covering, and sort of fabric sort of flaps. And that's where I keep Neil's wise words. And when Neil phones me up and reads me something, I will write it down. I'll put it in my Neil Gaiman portfolio. And it's very exciting because it has things that no one's seen yet. And there will come a point where Neil will sort of call me and go, I think it's time. I think it's time for this, it's time for that. The only other explanation, and I'm going to keep this very short, for what I've been doing is that my wife washed my jeans. This was at least 5 years ago. And I hadn't asked her to. I'd actually left them in the middle of the bedroom carpet, and she just went and washed them. And then came to me and said, I thought the washing machine was broken, but it wasn't. It was making a strange, sort of sound. I turned it off, took your jeans out, realized that you'd left your mobile phone in your jeans pocket. And so obviously I had to phone up my mobile phone provider and say, my wife washed my phone. And they very nicely sent me a new one. And the minute it arrived, I realized that my old one is technically what's called a stupid phone. Because they'd sent me a smartphone. It was wonderful. And on this smartphone, you can put apps. I didn't know what apps were back then, but a kind person showed me, and they from my publisher, and they put on social media onto my phone so that I could just take a photograph of a sketchbook page, and it would go onto these wonderful sort of Facebook places and Instagram and Tumblr. I thought no more washing machines. But anyway, it went on to all these places. And so I tried. I thought it was rude not to just try one. And I took a page from my sketchbook. I opened it. I took a photograph. It went onto my Facebook page that newly set up. And then the next day I had a look. And someone somewhere in the world who I'll never meet had sent me a blue thumb. And the minute this blue thumb sort of arrived, I just got this extraordinary, warm, fuzzy feeling. And I'm afraid I've been posting ever since. This was 5 years ago. And in order to sort of find things to post up about, I'm not necessarily polemic. I don't sort of force my views on anyone. But when I find wonderful words, and I find someone who provides wonderful words on a regular basis, I can't help but post them, do a drawing and post them up, and send them on their way into the world of the internet. And this is really where Art Matters came from. These are all drawings that originally happened on Instagram and Tumblr, on social media, and I'd post them up just because I was harvesting blue thumbs. That is my reason. And Neil is an extraordinary sort of progenitor of blue thumbs. I mean, I've never met anyone quite like him. And some of the things that Neil has posted up have just sort of moved into the internet and done extraordinary things. So I like to feel, and I'll finish right now, I like to feel that in the sort of superhero universe, I'm Neil's butler. Imagine the Batcave, Neil in black. I come in and suggest shall we have some Art Matters today, sir? And he said, yes, why not? And then we post something up and we go on adventures. So it's been a wonderful privilege, Neil, and thank you so much for allowing this to become a book.
I mean, I love it because I love the fact that both of us have the same point of view about art, which is people should be out there making it, and it makes lives better, it makes the world better. I just tend to tell people this. You actually get out there into the world and demonstrate it rather aggressively and continuously, which I think is significantly cooler.
Neil, one of the ideas in the book, one of the maxims in the book is, this thought that ideas are hard to kill. And of course it is the central idea in American Gods, too. What do you think are the biggest threats to free thinking, to creativity at the moment? What do we need to be guarding against and worrying about?
I think noise and failed balance. It's like that thing where people go, well, you have to give balance to ideas, and you don't really. I'm one of those people who likes to think of gravity as a thing. I don't feel like if I went out into the world and said gravity is a thing, that the anti-gravity people who regard it as foolish and wasteful of me not to float off into space should actually be given a platform. So watching just the amount of what I consider to be noise out there, and I think and that for me is possibly the biggest danger to ideas. But I also hope that a lot of that stuff is stuff where people will be able to, if we can survive for the next 50 years as a species, we probably will have figured a lot of it out. If not, there are going to be an awful lot of flat earthers, paddling their little boats amongst the ruins of the towers of New York. And
just caught sight of a familiar face over your shoulder there.
yes.
I do a lot of events in schools, Lauren. It's extraordinary what a reaction this gets, particularly from my 8-year-old audiences. I think they do view this man as a sort of children's book character in a curious way, possibly in a fable by Roald Dahl. I like to think of him as the Oompa Loompa of doom. Got that quality, yes.
Chris, is it true that when you spoke to your daughter, you gave her the advice, go to art school for art school's sake?
Do you know, that sounds so wise. I probably did say that, but I said that probably from my own experience, which was as a very biddable sort of schoolboy who tended towards the academics simply because I wanted to blend in and not cause trouble. And I remember saying to my art master, talking to my art master, telling him I was going off to study English at university, and he said, why didn't you go to art school? And I said, can I? And he said, you can get a good, sorry, back then we had grants. This was an extraordinary thing that back then, where they actually paid you to go and learn. It was an extraordinary thing. It might come back, who knows. So he said, yes, why don't you go to art school? And I thought, really, can I? And I needed permission. I went to my local art school. I said, can I come along to study next term? They said, do you have a grant? I said, yes. They said, welcome, come on in. But ever since then, I felt that wonderful transgressive sort of notion that I was a wonderful rebel for going to art school, for pursuing this extraordinary thing called art. I thought, just how cool am I? And it was confirmed when I arrived on the first day, and there was a young man with purple hair and very large orange trousers and a hussar sort of jacket on and some face paint. And I thought, these are my people. I've come, as I adjust my tie, I've come to the right place. And when Katie, my daughter, sort of said to me, Dad, I'm thinking about going to art school, I said, that's a terrible, terrible idea. No. I said, how could I not say, of course, pursue that? And I think it's one of the great things that goes to the heart, actually, Neil, of sort of make good art, is that notion that as artists we can't wait to be told what to do. We've got to get out and do it. We've got to be kinetic. We've got to create work and put it out there any way we can, and then try and address those tricky issues of earning a living and paying the rent and all these other issues. But we mustn't stop. We mustn't stop creating art.
Mm-hmm. Neil, you also, one of the ideas in the book is, I don't think there's such thing as a bad book for children. How important was reading to you when you were small, and who was it that kind of opened your eyes to the possibilities of books and literature?
It was enormously important. I mean, for me, reading and having books there was always a continuous lifesaver and a window into other worlds and a window into other people's heads. The idea that there were lots and lots of other people out there and behind every other set of eyes was a me was something that I don't know that I necessarily would have figured out without fiction as a kid. Probably the most important thing for me was the library. You know, my mum believed in libraries and took me along when I was 3 to get a library card. When we moved to Sussex, went and got another library card, age 5 or 6, and I managed to talk them into dropping me off at the library in summer holidays. They would just drive me up there. Sometimes they would embarrass me by remembering to give me sandwiches, which was just embarrassing. It's like, what am I doing with a bag with a sandwich in it? I'm in a library. This is just wrong. Somebody will find out. But mostly they forgot, which was fine. And I was very, very happy to be hungry. Because I was hungry for the stories more.
What were you reading?
What I would do is head into the children's section at the back, the little children's library, and it had an old-fashioned card catalogue with subjects. So I would simply head in and I'd look up magic and then just read every book they have with the word magic in the title or as a subject, or witches or detectives or ghosts or space or giants. And then round about the age of 11 or 12, I'd actually finished the children's library. So I thought, okay, adult library, and was incredibly disappointed to discover they didn't have it by subjects. And I thought, okay, what do you do? How do you tackle this? And I thought, well, probably alphabetically. And that failed very quickly.
Do you remember the letter where you dropped out?
It was somewhere in the A's. There were many, many feet of A's and many books that I was not yet ready for. But when I say there are no bad books for children, I guess I mean there's no books that a kid actually really wants to read that are bad books for children. People come to me and they say, well, what if a child wanted to read 50 Shades of Grey? And I'm like, well, probably they won't, because it's fairly boring as an adult. And you know, kids tend to, I remember what I tended to do as a kid with stuff that was inappropriate was either fail to notice it was there completely. You just don't notice it's there. You read the book 15 years later and you go, oh my God, that was what they were doing. But you can miss it. And having learned that, I also use that as a writer. Yeah. There's a scene in Stardust, right in the beginning, where...
Exquisite trolling from Chris Riddell. Exquisite.
There's a scene in the first chapter of Stardust where our hero is conceived, where if you know the mechanics of sex and tab A and slot B, you can actually, it's practically pornographic. If you don't, there are some adults, and there's definitely some kissing, and some wriggling, and it doesn't do that.
Reading the book, I was thinking about the fact that, and find it quite interesting, that we live in a time when it seems that both art and facts are under fire simultaneously. And I wonder whether there's a connection there, and I wonder if there's anything that, either of you guys see there. I mean, any
Lauren,
thoughts on...
That's a lovely, lovely question, and I want to lower the tone. I've got a sort of a confession and also an apology that I need to make. I have been contacted by a number of librarians, and like Neil, I love librarians, and I've had many sort of deeply personal experiences with librarians. And I draw. I've been accused of really sort of caricaturing the librarian. And a lovely person, a retired school librarian, sent me an email saying, I really enjoyed the piece that you did with Neil in The Guardian last week, but why do you draw these stereotypical librarians with bad hair, terrible glasses, and awful clothes sense? And I felt wounded because I've always found the librarians of my memory and my youth to have very exciting hair, often pulled up into a sort of, just quite exciting. I've always loved glasses, and I've loved drawing glasses. It's something that I think they're one of the wonderful things, and so the idea of terrible glasses pains me as well. I thought my librarians wore, quite frankly, very alluring glasses. And when it comes to that wonderful sort of, the librarians of my youth did seem to wear wonderful cardigans and sometimes pearls. Maybe I'm just embellishing here, but again, this for me was a very exciting sort of Mad Men style look. So I had to apologize, and I do apologize to librarians if I have sort of characterized you in a rather sort of inappropriate way, because I know librarians, and I've met many, and you come in all shapes and sizes, but what you do is you love books and you introduce readers to books that you know they're going to enjoy. And it is an absolute travesty, I think, that we actually live in a country now where libraries aren't valued in the way that they really ought to be. They're under-resourced, they have staffing cuts, they are closed down, it seems, with impunity, because, I don't know whether you've heard, we live in an age of austerity. Stop reading that book. You're wasting your time. We rely, don't we, Neil, on librarians to make readers of the future, but it's more important than that, and I think you've expressed this beautifully. And actually, I feel, again, to quote the great Ray Bradbury, without libraries, we have no past and we have no future. I did draw my most alluring librarian holding a placard with that written on it, but she had terrible glasses apparently, and her hair was really awful.
I think ideas and art are easy to attack, and I think that art that expresses ideas is very easy to attack. I've spent a great deal of my professional life serving on the boards of organizations or fundraising for organizations that defend people who make dangerous art. And by dangerous art, you could just be a cartoonist or a caricaturist in a state where such things can get you murdered or sent to prison. But I find one of the things that fascinates me about that is the incredible accessibility of images. To decide that you want to censor a book, you kind of have to read the book, and they're full of words, and that's work. So not a lot of book censoring actually tends to happen. Cartoons, art, images are really, really easy things to attack, because you can show somebody a bit of something, you can get people upset by mischaracterizing it. And I'm not, and it can happen to all sorts of art. I remember when in America, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, there was a lot of art that was under attack, including the painting of the Black Madonna which had elephant dung on it. And as if this was a terribly bad, awful thing, and I would read about the elephant dung Madonna, and I think, so what is this? This is sort of a evil shit thing. And it wasn't until I was in Hobart, Tasmania, at the Mona Museum and saw that art hanging on the wall that I discovered that, okay, so this is an African artist who is using dried elephant dung, as his people have done for a very long time, as part of the image to add texture to a really beautiful painting. And there was, why didn't anyone tell me this was beautiful? Nobody mentioned that. And I thought, okay, it's interesting. In the war, you do get a war against ideas, but in some ways art can win, because it comes back from behind. And I think that was why the Credo piece was written, and why Chris loved it and illustrated it and put it out into the world.
We're going to get some audience questions shortly, and our auction is going to be taking place. But just before that, I've just got time to ask you a little bit about what's coming next for you, because Neil, obviously Good Omens is coming to TV. Where are you at with it? What can you tell us?
You know, probably anything I tell you, I'm not allowed to tell you, so...
We won't tell anyone, right, guys?
So let's see what I can tell you.
We'll keep it in the room.
I've basically spent the last 18 months writing Good Omens. I've spent the last 6 months in a dark room with an editor and a director, shaping the episodes of Good Omens that we had shot. We will be finished with that process this week. We have sound still to do. There's 240 speaking parts. The music is being done. David Arnold, our glorious composer, just recorded the music for episode 2. We're just putting this thing together. It will be out somewhere in the first half of next year on Amazon Prime, and then probably about 6 months later, it'll show up on the BBC. And I'm really proud of it. Nowhere on my list of things that I plan to do in this lifetime was stop being a writer for a couple of years and show-run a giant TV show. But unfortunately, my friend Terry Pratchett died shortly after extracting a promise from me that I would write Good Omens and see it through and make it good, which turned it into a last request. And I'd never had one of those before. And so I've wound up, for my stuff, I'm always much, much happier to just give it to somebody. You know, I'll write something and I'll say, Chris, I've written this poem for kids called Pirate Stew. Do you want to illustrate it? And he'll say, yes. And I'll say, good. And at that point, Chris is on his own. He has the words of the poem, and how he decides to tell it is up to him. And I love that. And the same goes for movies and for TV. It's like you find somebody good, you let them get on with it, you help them whenever they need help, but you're not doing it. Except with Good Omens, it wasn't me. So, I wound up in a world in which I had things like budget battles. I was not put on this fucking earth to have budget battles. And except when somebody is telling me that, no, we cannot afford to actually, have a 16th, 17th century Lancashire village and a witch burning, actually a witch exploding. I'm like, no, you're going to have it, because Terry made me promise to do this. And he wrote that scene, and if I don't film it, he will come back, and I'm fucked. So Agnes Nutter is going to be exploded. And they're like, okay. And that's what it's been like. But I'm really, really looking forward to retiring. I have a novel that I'm 100 pages into, and it's really good, I think. And it's a Neverwhere, the next Neverwhere book.
So I met Neil for a drink at the Covent Garden Hotel. I had just been at RADA, performing with my pencil. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? I was drawing The Little Prince. Anyway, it had been a long, hot day. Neil was in London, and this is the great byproduct of Good Omens, is that Neil's in London, more than he would normally be. And so we met for a drink at the Covent Garden Hotel, and we chatted, didn't we, Neil? It was a very pleasant interlude in our days. And we were talking about various things, and then I remember you got that look in your eye. You'd had a long day, were possibly wrangling budgets, possibly chasing David Tennant around, saying, David, you've got to wear those contact lenses. It'll make you look more devilish. That sort of thing. Michael Sheen, please, can you sort of backcomb your hair a little bit more? Those things you have to do when you're sort of running a show. It had been a long day. I think Neil had got back a little bit exhausted the night before. I'd sat down. He said to me, would you like to hear what I've been writing? I said, well, if you must. And so Neil went to his room, came back down with a journal, handwritten, opened it, and read me a chapter. And I had to resist the urge to tweet as Neil was reading, taking a selfie possibly, hashtag I'm listening to Neil Gaiman's new project, that sort of thing. I had to resist it. I tried to look nonchalant as I listened. It's very exciting is all I can tell you. There is, I hope, a lot of room in the margins for illustration. If executed in the right way. I think Patrick Insall, the designer at Headline, is in the audience. So I'm just saying, Patrick, cast your mind back to Neverwhere. I think I was commissioned to do 6 illustrations at Neil's invitation. I turned up and gave Patrick a sheaf of paper that big. I'd drawn on almost every other page. He just took it in his stride. It was so wonderful. He said, we'll sort it out, don't worry. I'm hoping that can happen again, Neil. I'm looking forward to it. If you can just manage David and Michael and get Good Omens on the screen, I think we're all waiting for this. This is the next one.
We're all waiting, right? Chris, you have 3 new books out this autumn, don't you?
I do. Thank you, Lauren, for that. I mean, it's shameless self-publicity here. There is the very beautiful Art Matters that has appeared as if from nowhere, which is very, very exciting. I also have a book called Poems to Live Your Life By, which sounds a rather portentous title, not my own, but I wanted to grab people in and say, here it is. It's all my favourite poems in an anthology that I've illustrated, including my two favourite poems by Neil, Orphe and Witchwork are in there. And we're going to have, I think, Lauren, a little auction in a moment. I've printed out some of my favourite poems by Neil, which we will auction in a moment. Neil has signed them very beautifully.
Would you like me to read one of them?
That would be marvellous.
Should we do that? Yeah.
Do we have them?
Fabulous. Do we have them? Yes, we do.
Well.
They're back here. As if by magic. I think we should get the auction started then, in which case we should probably invite, just before, if you have a look at these, Neil.
Tales of Beadle the Bard, out in October. That's coming soon. And Once Upon a Wildwood, a picture book. Just thought I'd get that in there very quickly.
Get
Sorry,
them in.
Lauren,
Yes, absolutely. So our audience Q&A is coming up. If we're about to do the auction, then I think we should hear just very briefly a little bit about what we're raising money for and what your money will go towards. So please welcome to the stage Director of English Pen, Antonia Byett.
Huge thank you, Neil and Chris and Lauren, but also to Hachette, who are a Silver Pen partner, for inviting us here. And I've had a great evening so far, and the auction is coming. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about English Pen. And I just wanted to start with something that Neil wrote in Art Matters, which is incredibly bold, an energetic statement, and kind of says what pen's about. So in it, you'll see, he says, "I believe that you can set your own ideas against ideas you dislike, that you should be free to argue, explain, clarify, debate, offend, insult, rage, mock, sing, dramatize, and deny." And like Neil, English Pen, we believe that ideas and literature should freely cross frontiers, whether they're geographic or their personal ones. So our translation programme supports the travel of international literature. Everyone here knows, I'm sure, how frustrating it is if you're feeling no one's listening to you, or that your opinion isn't allowed, or that you might be stopped from challenging something that you believe is wrong. We're really lucky in the UK that we live in a democracy where, on the whole, people do have freedom of expression. And at Penn, we work to give people a voice in this country. So our Young Refugee Writers Programme, for example, reaches thousands of people with what those young writers want to say. But in the other parts of the world, that just isn't the case, as Neil was saying earlier. There are hundreds of writers all over the world locked up because they've expressed an opinion that is not acceptable to an authoritarian state. It could be you drew a picture of the president in a nappy, for example. And that really does happen in some places, as Neil was saying earlier. So last year, English Pen campaigned for writers in 32 countries across the world. Some of them are still in prison after many years. One's very ill on hunger strike in Russia. But the good news is several of them have also been released. And I just want to take a tiny bit of time to tell you about one of them, someone that Neil has helped us campaign for, because this week marks 2 years since Ahmet Altan was arrested in Turkey. He's been sentenced to life in prison without parole because he attempted to overthrow the constitutional order. In other words, he criticised the Turkish government. We don't want him to be silenced, and I want you to hear his voice this evening because I want that third writer to be here. And this is what he sent to us from prison, and I'm just going to read it to you because I think it's an incredibly powerful expression of why art matters. So he wrote, "Yes, I'm being held in a high-security prison in the middle of the wilds. Yes, I'm staying in a cell while the door is opened and closed with the rattle and clatter of iron. Yes, they give me my meals through a hole in the middle of the door. Yes, even the top of the small stone-paved courtyard where I pace up and down is covered in steel cages. Yes, I'm not allowed to see anyone other than my lawyers and my children. Yes, I am forbidden from sending even a 2-line letter to my loved ones. All of this is true, but it's not the whole truth. They may have the power to imprison me, but no one has the power to keep me in prison. I am a writer. I am neither where I am nor where I am not. Wherever you lock me up, I will travel the world within the wings of my endless mind. Besides, I have friends all around the world who help me travel. Most of them I've never met. Each eye that reads what I've written, each voice that repeats my name, holds my hand like a little cloud and flies over the lowlands, the springs, the forests, the seas, the towns, and their streets. They host me quietly in their houses, in their halls, in their rooms. I travel the whole world in a prison cell. I'm writing this in a prison cell, but I'm not in prison. I am a writer. I am neither where I am nor where I am not. You can imprison me, but you cannot keep me in prison, because like writers, I have magic. I can pass through walls with ease. It's really crucially important. And if Ahmed Altan knew that 750 people tonight had heard that and were clapping and shouting, that would make just the most enormous difference to him, and I'm sure that people will tell him tonight. So thank you very, very much. It's really, really important that we can campaign for people like Altan and that they're not forgotten and left to languish in prison. But we do need resources to do it, and we do need people to help us with the work we do. So I want you to bid wildly, wildly, wildly for the kind gifts that Chris and Neil have given us tonight. Please bid wildly to support PEN. And if you're not lucky enough to win any of them in the auction, there's some buckets outside. And if everyone in this room put £5 in a bucket, which isn't really very much, it's only 2 cups of coffee, it would raise enough money to support us campaigning for a writer like Altan for a whole year. So please do that, and also if you can, join English PEN, because our members give us the incredibly important core funding that keeps us going. So thank you all very much in advance, and I'm going to sit with excitement to see what happens.
Thank you, Antonia. Okay, so behind me here on the easel, you can see the beautiful artwork taken from this book. That is part of our auction. That was our central auction lot. And we also have these additional illustrations that Chris has done. And Neil, up for reading them, I think.
I'll just read one of them. Okay. But I'll come and read it over here so that you can put it down.
Perfect.
So people can see the pictures. So this is one. There are 3 poems, pieces of mine, that Chris has illustrated, and I signed each at the end. And this is a sonnet. I don't think that I've been in love as such, although I liked a few folk pretty well. Love must be vaster than my smiles or touch. For brave men died, and empires rose and fell. For love, girls follow boys to foreign lands, and men have followed women into hell. In plays and poems, someone understands there's something makes us more than blood and bone, and more than biological demands. For me, love's like the wind, unseen, unknown. I see the trees are bending where it's been. I know that it leaves wreckage where it's blown. I really don't know what I love you means. I think it means, don't leave me here alone.
Okay. Right. I'm going to stand here so that I can see a little bit better, and we are going to give a hard 7 minutes on this. We've got to keep it tight. Oh, great. Thank you, House Lights. Excellent. So, for this illustration and these incredible individual artworks of the poem, let's start the bidding like comically low.
Are we doing one big thing, or are we doing three?
We doing one?
Are we doing one? Because the other two are The Day the Saucers Came, which Chris will show you, and Everything I Have to Tell You About Love, which Chris will also show you. There you go.
Okay.
We're doing one big.
I was told one big.
One big. Okay.
One big.
So you get that giant, lovely original.
What do you think, Anthony? One? You want 1 and 3 littles? 1 and 3 littles is good. We can do that. Okay. We're all in the room live. Let's make it happen. Okay. Should we start with the big one first? Okay. Let's start with the illustration from the book first. I'm going to start the bidding comically low at £25. Do I see £25 in the room? Okay. Do I see 50? £50. Okay. 75.
Bring it over here.
Lady in green, great. Okay. Taking it up to 100 now. More than worth it. 100 for Madam here. She wants it. She's after it. Who's going to take it offer for 150? Who's got 150 quid? Gentleman in the back, straight up there. Love that. All right. £200 then. Talk to me. Come on, this is East London. It's well worth it. Excellent. It's not like when I lived round here. Nobody had 200 quid then. 250. Who's got 250? Everyone at the back's got 250. Excellent. Let's take it to 300. Who can do 300 for us? Madam, you are in. Love it. Okay, we've got 300 quid at the back. 350. 350 for English pen. You love it. She's hanging on to it. She is keen for it. She means what she's saying. Who's going to show the challenge here? So we're at 350, going to 400. Who'll take us to 400? Madam, sir, at the back. Lip that person there. 400, I can't see, these glasses aren't strong enough, but I know I've got 400 quid at the back. 450, 450. Who's going to show me 450? It's more than worth it. It's being handled by Neil Gaiman. And over there,
you can extract the DNA and grow a new me.
All right. £500. Who is going to give me 500? She's back in the race. Sod it, she says. I've come out for the night. I am having it. Okay, £500, 550. Let's go 550. We can do this. Come on, we're a generous crowd. 550 at the back. Excellent. 600, please. Who's going to show me 600? Come on, there's someone with balls big enough, and there they are. Back in the game. Forgot where I am now. 600? 600. Bloody well right. 650. Who's going to talk to me for 650? It is becoming a battle of wills between my two favourite women in this audience. Who else is going to join the game for 700 English pounds for English pen? I know you've got it. £700 at the back. Excellent. 750. Who's going to go to 750? More than worth it. 750. Yes! Round of applause for 750. That is enough money to clap for. But I am bad at maths and I want a round number, so let's do 800. 800, madam. I love it. 800. What about 850? Who's got 850 quid? To get some ideas travelling. Yes! 850 quid at the back. £900 for this one-off, only one in the world piece, currently in the paws of Neil Gaiman. 900 quid. 900. Who's going to stretch to it? You have got it. 900. Yes! It's sitting pretty at £900. I am thrilled for you. I am delighted for you, but I'm open to someone ruining her night. So who's going to come in at 950? 950. Have we got 950? Where is the hand? I know there's a hand.
Ooh, yes.
Ooh. So, I mean, if you're going to spend 950, there's not that much in it to take it to 1,000, is there? It's not much difference. yes! Promise me that after this you will go for a coffee and become best friends. Okay. So 1,050. Are we going to take it over the line to 1,050? 1,100. 1,100, excellent. 1,150. 15! Oh! She hasn't got time to mess about. Boom! Balls on the table, guys. £1,500. Who is going to top that and take me to 1,600? 1,600, you tapped out. 1,500. Okay. For an amazing cause.
We will sign this for you as well.
1,500. Going once. Going twice. Sold to the Lady in Green. All right. Oh my God, the drama. I've never done that before. That was exciting. I can see why those guys who talk fast about cows really get into it. Okay, so we've got 3 quickies now. Now, as we went 1,500 for the big, should we start these? Let's start these at 50 quid each. Okay, so we've got lots 1 to 3. First up, Dark Sonnet. £50 for Dark Sonnet. Okay, great. Lots of hands going up. £100. £150. Okay, £150 there. I see you. Excellent. £200. Do I see £200? £200 there. 250. 250, 300. Do I see 300 at the back? Excellent. 350. Do I see 350? There you are, sir. See you. 400. 400 at the back. 450. 450, one set. Excellent. Okay. £500. Do I see £500? 550. Don't see five. Okay, so £500. Going once. Going twice. Ooh, 500. Who is it? You're back in. She's like, well, I've come all this way. 500. So you're a 500. 550. 1,000. Oh my God. Yes. Anyone top 1,000? Will anyone go higher than 1,000? Wave really hard because I'm quite short-sighted. 1,100? Are we doing, yeah? 1,100? Fuck it, yeah. Okay. 1,100 to the gentleman at the back. Anybody going to top that and go to 1,200? All right, going once. Going twice. Sold to the gentleman at the back. Okay. I don't think my nerves can take this. All right, second lot.
So
what have we
second
got
up,
next?
this is something I wrote for a friend's marriage called Everything I Learned About Love, Everything I Have to Tell You About Love. And this is the first page. It begins, this is everything I have to tell you about love, nothing. This is everything I've learned about marriage, nothing. Only that the world out there is complicated and there are beasts in the night and delight and pain. And the only thing that makes it okay sometimes is to reach out a hand in the darkness and find another hand to squeeze and not to be alone. It's not the kisses, or never just the kisses, it's what they mean. Somebody's got your back. Somebody knows your worst self and somehow doesn't want to rescue you or send for the army to rescue them. It's not two broken halves becoming one. It's the light from a distant lighthouse bringing you both safely home, because home is wherever you're both together. So this is everything I have to tell you about love and marriage. Nothing. Like a book without pages or a forest without trees. Because no study can prepare you for the joys or the trials. Because nobody else's love, nobody else's marriage is like yours. And it's a road you can only learn by walking it. A dance you cannot be taught. A song that did not exist before you began together to sing. And because in the darkness you'll reach out a hand, not knowing for certain if someone else is even there, and your hands will meet, and neither of you will ever need to be alone again. And that's all I know about love.
I'm going to start the bidding on this exquisite item at £700. Because I know it's worth it. Yeah, £700, excellent. Do I see £750? £800. £800 over there, £850. £850 in the middle, £900. £900 for that lady there, £950. In the corner, excellent. Who's going to take us to 1,000? 1,000 at the back, 1,100. 1,100 to the lady over there, 1,002. 1,200. £1,200 for this one-off, unique, one-time only, individual object, the like of which here, where people are pointing, there she is. 1,200. 1,300. Do I see 1,300? Press for time, 1,300, excellent, 1,004. 1,400, who has got £1,400? 1,500. Well done, excellent. Who is going to top that 1,006? 1,700. I'm looking for £1,700. Okay, going once at £1,600 to this lady. Going twice. 1,650. And walking home. Doesn't even need a cab, forget it. Forget the bus. Okay, 1,650. 1,700, round 1,700. Okay. Can you go any higher, madam? What do you think? 17, do I see 18? 1,800? Or am I selling it for 1,700 over here in the corner? 1,800, she's got 1,800, sod it. She'll sort it out tomorrow. It's for English pen, it's worth it. 1,900? 1,900, she's in for a penny, she's in for a pound. £2,000! What do we think? We've come to 1,800. Is £2,000 doable to anybody in the audience for this one-off, unique artwork? Or is it going for, thinking about it, £2,000? 2,000, I think we clapped £2,000. Because it wasn't, I mean, I know she's going to be delighted afterwards, but it wasn't easy getting there. So we definitely clapped that £2,000 because that is a well-earned £2,000. Do I see anybody topping that? 2,100? 2,100, 2,200, 2,200. Okay, I'm going to sell that for 2,100 to the lady in the corner. Going once, going twice. Sold for 1,200. Excellent. How many have we done? It's not three. We've got one more. We've got one more. All right, last chance saloon, guys. One more. Let's take a look at it on Chris Cam. Here it is.
So this is a poem called The Day the Saucers Came. And magically, the pages are out of order.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
No, it's okay. It's either that or you don't have the first couple of pages. Which is also possible. Either of these things are possible.
That's possible.
Are there any pages in
No,
there?
no,
still?
don't worry. There are some pages.
Ah, that now.
Shall I start the bidding, Neil, while you show the pages? Because we're very pressed
Yes,
for time, and I'm
we
keen
are.
to start this Q&A. Okay. So I'm just going to start us off at a hard 700. So I think there's just been some big game hunting going on in here. We're not even going to go lower than that. £700 for this unique lot. It is the last one, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're going to spend some money tonight and raise money for this excellent cause, this is the place to put it. Do I see £700 in the audience? Yes, I do. Over there. Why didn't I see you earlier? £700. Excellent. £750. Who's going to take me to £750? Last lot. It's got to be a biggie. Excellent. £800. Do I see £800 anywhere? Yes, I do over here. Wonderful. £850. £900. Who's got £900 for me? I sense that someone has. Where are you? Because it's like the last one. Yes, exactly. £900. Who's going to go above that? Who's going to take us to £950? £950, madam. Yes, you are. You little diamond. £950. £1,000. Because it would be rude not to, exactly. It's the last one. 1,000. 1,100. Let's just get this done. 1,100. 1,200. 1,200. Yes! 1,300. She's shaking her head, but in a way that she's considering it. She's like, oh, I shouldn't really, but it's the last one. 1,300. Do I see 1,300, or is it going to be sold to the gentleman at the back for 1,200? 1,003? 1,300. Wonderful. 1,400. 1,400. 1,500. £1,500. It stands with the man at the back who's going to take it off him for 1,600 English pounds. 1,600. It's not all that much for a piece of art that will live with you for the rest of your days. 1,600. 1,600. Start an art collection. Show off to your friends. They'll be loving it. Can they have one? No, they fucking can't. £1,600. Who's going to give me 1,600? £1,600, yes! She's entered the race. £1,600 to the lady at the back. 1,600, do I see 1,700? 1,700. I see you, sir. 1,800. 18. Do I see £1,800 anywhere? Wave your hands, because I am extremely short-sighted. 18. So it's staying with you at 17. Okay, going once. Going twice. It's the last lot of the night. And it is sold for £1,800. Well done, sir. Right. Genuinely, my adrenal glands are now like raisins. Could the winners of the lots please collect their prints, their artworks at the end downstairs at the English pen table? Now, I know we are running over tonight because we started a little bit late, but everybody is here for audience questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we're going to give this, I think we give this 15. Okay, everybody's getting involved now because it's free. The lady with the excellent lipstick and the check shirt, I come to you first because those are things I respect.
Laura, there's a mic right now at the front.
There's a mic.
Is it okay?
Why do you have a mic? Yes, go for it.
Thank you. Hi. I was wondering about the list that you put in the book, the things you wanted to do, and so you put them in a list, and then you just did that. Did you keep doing that list? And is there anything on that list that, at this point, you're sure you're never going to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. The big trouble with the list is I made it when I was 15 and didn't actually keep it. I remember showing it to my mum who was very polite about it. And years later, asking her what she thought of it, I said, do you remember that list? She said, oh, yes, dear. I said, you know, I've pretty much done everything on there. What did you think when I showed it to you when I was 15? I said, well, I thought it was ridiculous, darling, but I wasn't going to tell you. Yeah, there are a few things that I still haven't done from the list that I'm still working on. Still want to do a musical. So one day, that's down on the giant one-day list, and there's a secret plan. But no, I think I really mostly need to just sort of make another list. And there are also things that sort of, that you think you've done, and then you kind of realize, well, you did it a while ago, but you haven't done it now. I always love the idea of doing, for example, doing a children's book. Really, and some of these things I say doing a, but then you need to do a few before you get it right. And I really kind of felt like I'd done it and I got it right. And now I have a very small son. He'll be 3 on Sunday. He mostly loves singing Beatles songs and being read to. And there's that sudden point where I go, well, hang on, I haven't written you a book. I have to write a book for you because I keep reading books, and some of these books are books that I wrote. He discovered a copy of The Wolves in the Walls at the place that we were staying, where they happened to have one, and started learning it off by heart. And I'm like, well, yes, I love reading you this book. I wouldn't normally have read it to you until you were about 5, but you love it. And I actually wrote it for your sister 20 years ago, and so I need to do stuff for you. And so there's stuff that sort of you think you've done, and you think you've ticked it off the list, and then it comes back. And no, I never, ever, 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 ever want to be in politics.
All right, I'm going to come to my lady that I wanted to speak to first after that. Thank you very much, because she had her hand up there, at the back there, lady with the red hair. Yeah. There's a mic coming to making its way to you right now.
Hi, hey. My question is for Neil. I'm just curious because I get phrases and things just stuck in my head, floating around, that not necessarily make themselves an idea or anything. Is there a phrase or a word that is stuck in your head that you're not sure what you're going to do with yet, or just a favorite phrase?
There are definitely, and I'm going to toss this one over to Chris as well after I've answered it. There are definitely a few weird little things that are still, that never wound up having a character or a plot or anything quite attached to them, but they're just sort of free-floating. And the phrase "slippery when wet."
I believe Def Leppard already made that into
I was going to say, Def Leppard made it into an album.
I don't want to interrupt.
No, I mean, they did. And, but I've always loved it, particularly when you just see these little signs that say "slippery when wet." And you go, got to be more to something that you can do with that. Where does that go? I have no idea, but it's just sort of just sits there. There's even weirder one. That almost seems dangerous to mention now that I realize that whatever I say next will be drawn by Chris. Chris, do you have any phrases or bits or things sitting around, or even little characters who are waiting to be drawn?
That's difficult. I think there is a phrase, actually, that does go around in my head from time to time, and I'm probably not alone with this. And it's... yeah, I mean, that seems to go around my head all the time. I don't know why. But luckily, last month, I think it was about a month ago, I actually solved... I solved Brexit. It just came to me in a blinding flash. I realised that actually what we need in order to sort of just solve Brexit once and for all is we need what's called a transition period. You know, just a little bit of periods where we can sort of, tease out the issues, take our time, figure it out. And my idea is the transition period should be 25 years. Problem solved. Problem solved right there. You heard it here first.
All right, I've got time for a couple more questions. Whoa.
There is a
wow.
question.
Well, if you could bring the mics to you with just that whistle, then that would be... Seems fair enough. This better be good.
Hi. And I thought me standing was kind of, thank you. So I wanted to ask about the dangerous art that you were talking about. I was in Hanoi earlier this year, and I did this art tour, and the end was this art gallery that there was really challenging, critical art, and they kept emphasizing how all art needs to be authorized, and that art very much wasn't, and how dangerous it would be for the artist if it was found by the authorities. And I was wondering if you think there's ever a limit, if there's ever a time where art shouldn't be made for the personal safety of the artist, or is it always worth the risk to send the message, put it out there? And where does this stand, especially with the amazing charity that we're raising money for tonight?
From my perspective, I don't know. I think that's something that each individual artist has to come to on their own. There are definitely people who, over the years, have said it is more important for me to make this art than for my personal safety. And there are other people who've looked around and gone, I have a husband, I have children, I have a world, I actually am going to decide not to do this, or I will keep it secret. And I think that's okay too. I mean, you're allowed to make those decisions for yourself about what you make, what you do, and how you survive. But what I do know is that art saves lives, and very often it saves the lives of the people who are making it, as probably a lot more than it ends them. Chris?
Well, I do have a parallel career. When it talks, I'm a children's book illustrator, a political cartoonist on occasion, Friday afternoons. And I was also, for a period of time, the Children's Laureate, which is a sort of, thank you, which is a role where I had to go around and talk in a lot of different places about the things that, in a sense, we've been touching on now. The importance of creativity and reading and literacy and those sort of things. And the other thing I enjoy doing a lot is drawing on walls. I think it's called street art, I'm not sure. I did, as Children's Laureate, don a disguise, impenetrable disguise, one of those masks that when Robin puts on, you don't recognize him at all. It's one of those. And I did go around drawing on the walls of bookshops with impunity. No one recognized me. And so I like to think that that was about as dangerous as I get when I do art. Actually, you might know me by my other name. No, you can't prove otherwise. You know, it's just... So the next time you're in a bookshop, do have a look at the walls. I might have scribbled on them. Who knows? I've also got this other idea, which occurred to me when I walked through Brighton, where I lived the other day, and I saw graffiti on not that great, you know, the really exciting graffiti, the sort of Banksy graffiti, the stuff you stop and go, how do they do that? But that really scrawly stuff that just gets stuck. And I thought it would be fun to maybe do something called sort of graffiti fixing, where you come along and turn, you know, that sort of, you know, the tag, you know, sort of on the wall, and then try and turn it into an exquisite sort of, you know, pre-Raphaelite sort of, you know, floral tribute of some sort. So I might attempt that. Who knows? That could be my next incarnation. But I think the idea of dangerous art is a wonderful one. I think art should be transgressive. It should challenge sort of boundaries. But it should also be, I think, and this is the other thing we've been talking about, a deeply personal thing. Art is what we decide it is as sort of creative people. And I think we should never be sort of told by critics or the establishment what is art and what isn't art. I think that is up to us.
Well, on that note, we are out of time. Who knew we would end on graffiti and the language of flowers? That is all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much to Earth for hosting us, and of course to English Pen. Yeah. If you would like to make a donation, thank you, Neil and Chris. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you. So guys, thank you each and every one of you for coming. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience tonight. There are copies of Art Matters and more wonderful titles, courtesy of Foyles, outside the auditorium on sale, so please do pick them up. If you want to make a donation to English Pen on your way out, that would be so appreciated. Thank you very much indeed for coming. It's fantastic to see you all here tonight. Thanks for being such a great audience.